How's it going, guys? Let's catch up here once again, bringing you another sort of introduction video to a character. A lot of people have been asking for War God Kotal Kahn, so here it is. Don't play loads of this character, but I like to think that I understand at the very least the basics. There really isn't a whole lot to this character. Across all three variations, your general footsies will be the same, so let's go over some of his strings that you're going to be using a lot. His forward 1 has really good range and a really fast start up. Forward 1, 2, forward 1, back 2. A lot of things will start from this. It's a mid, really good startup time, not particularly unsafe on block. It's a really good poke as by itself. However, you know, you can do forward 1, 2, forward 1, back 2, which launches. Do another one of those into sword, obviously you get this, which is a good combo. But generally, forward 1's a good poke. Forward 2, this is another one of the main pokes you're going to be using. A really far advancing, pretty fast, again a mid that launches and it leads into a full combo like so. So your main pokes will come from forward 1, forward 2, forward 1, 2, forward 1, back 2. This kind of sort of mid-range game is one of the things that really helps Kotal Kahn sort of command the mid-range and gives him the really good footsies that he's got. Obviously combining with the fact that his down 4 has amazing range on it and a really good startup. You know, land a down 4, bang, you can go and start applying pressure, or you can just do down 4 into one of his special moves. But string-wise, I mean, you know, a lot of Kotal Kahn's strings are good. You've got the back 3, 2, which is only -2 on block, recovers really, really quickly. You've got his back 1, 2, so that's obviously a mid as well. Kotal Kahn has a lot of good mids. Obviously mids can't be neutral crouched, and that's one of the big deals about them. So he's got, you know, back 1, 2, 2, last hits no overhead, back 1, 4, obviously that's mid into low. But yeah, so generally from strings, a lot of his strings are useful, but we're going to go into Kotal Kahn real quick. What makes War God so different from the other two? And it comes from a really big deal on the fact that he gets his low, which is down back 2, which is a low swipe, and down back 1, which is an overhead swipe. So if you can see the command list or the moves here, this is a low, which must be crouched. This is an overhead, which must be blocked standing up. It's very hard to react to these moves basically when you're using them in pressure. And what War God's going to do is he's going to constantly turn almost everything into one of these 50-50s. If I do a down 4, instead of doing a down 4 and then running for pressure, I'm going to do down 4 straight into one of these 50-50s. Down 4 into low, or down 4 into overhead. The second they block or get hit by down 4, they have to take the 50-50, which is a good chunk of damage if they guess wrong. So 9% on the low, 9% on the overhead. Both of them do the same amount of damage and put you in a good situation to go low, then you can run in and start doing more things. So down 4 into low, for example, run in for something else. So first of all, a lot of your strings and normals will go into one of your 50-50s, which will be the down back 1 or the down back 2. The down back 1 meter burn obviously pops the opponent in the air, which follows up for combos. You get really good damage off this, and it's armored. So, you know, this is good as a reversal, it's good as a wake up attack, it's good to interrupt things. Obviously, you know, there's a gap in a string, you can interrupt the gap with this. And the big deal is you get really good damage actually. So even something really basic, which will be meter burn reversal, forward 2, forward 1, back 2 into, you know, down forward 2, which is a sword attack. That just bags 32% damage by itself, and it's a really, really easy combo to actually do. I'm sure you can get more, but you know, for the purpose of this video, we'll simplify it. So in terms of turning every normal into a 50-50, you can do that. So you can do down 4 into low, down 4 into overhead, or you can do down 4 into just that, for example, if you think they're going to try and jump out or something like that. But the main reason you're going to be using the down forward 2, which is this move, is to end combos. So most of the time you're going to be comboing into this and just ending combos in it, because it gets good damage. You know, it leaves them in this nice kind of mid-range situation where when this lands, you're still in range to do your forward 1, your forward 2, etc, etc. But let's talk about the War God mix-ups. So, one of the most obvious block strings that Kotal Kahns will do is the back 1, 4 overhead sword, because it's mid, low, overhead instantly. Leads into full combo, really good damage by itself. If I end that in sword, do back 1, 4, meter burn sword, end it in this combo, you know, that bags a really easy 36% damage just by itself. You can even get more damage as far as I'm aware, but we'll keep things simple. That's kind of like an obvious string. Most Kotal Kahns will do mid, low, overhead. You can then do mid, low, sword, for example. So the second the opponent starts respecting this block string and they actually start blocking it, let's put him on block mode always, for example. If he blocks this, it's unsafe on block. The meter burn sword is unsafe and they can punish me, especially someone like Kung Lao. So the second he starts actually learning this block string here, he'll start punishing you for the overhead. So what you need to start doing in this situation is, where you would normally give an overhead, you can understand that, okay, he's blocking the string. Let's give him something else. Back 1, 4, low sword. So instead of mid, low, overhead, which would be this, which he's going to block all the time, you can then throw in the low sword. It doesn't do much damage, but the important thing is you're chucking in a hit that he is not going to be blocking. It does 9% by itself, and it's not necessarily about the damage, it's about conditioning the opponent that you're not going to go for this one block string the whole time. The second he starts respecting this block string, you can start throwing in a sword option, which is a different direction. So if I turn him off blocking, the most obvious block string here will be back 1-4. So mid-low, most Kotal Kahns will always do back 1-4. So you block high or low, and you always just wait for that low kick. If you're defending against it, you're blocking low, waiting for that low kick, and then you're going to block the follow-up. However, if it even gets to the point where the opponent is starting to respect the low option and blocks that, you have to start doing back 1 straight into overhead sword. But instead of it being mid-low, you go mid-overhead. If you know they're going to block low because they're waiting for that low kick, obviously your overhead comes out, they take 33% damage, which means that the next time you do it, let's say they put it into automatic block, right? So let's say we catch him with the block string, and you know he's going to block this the next time you do it, because you've just hit him with this combo. He's going to expect the mid-low again. Run in, and then you do back 1 into overhead immediately, because he's going to be blocking the low. So what War God mix-ups are all about is the fact that you acknowledge what the strings are. For example, back 1-2-2, which ends in overhead, you can do back 1-2 into low sword, because it's back 1-2 into low, rather than back 1-2 into overhead, which the string is. So if you're doing it on block, for example, let's turn them on always block. Back 1-2-2 overhead, obviously. So you can do back 1-2-2 into overhead sword. That's safe on block and will combo if the overhead connects. However, you can do back 1-2 low sword, because if he's waiting for the overhead, he's going to get hit by the low. So generally what War God is going to be is you need to acknowledge what area his combo strings hit. So for example, back 1-4, that's a low. So in a situation where he's going to block that low, you throw in the overhead, expecting him to block that low. The second you start throwing out the overhead there, it almost becomes a complete 50-50, because the second that back 1 connects, he's not going to know whether a low's coming out in the back 1-4 or whether a sword's coming out. Bear in mind, guys, the regular overhead is actually safe on block. It's not punishable. So you can throw out these 50-50 options, and if they're meatless, they won't bag you a full combo, but they're going to be safe on block at least, which means that every single time you get in, you have the threat of a 50-50. So I get a jump in, do this, bam, guesses wrong, gets hit by the overhead. Or guesses thinking that, he's going to think that I'm going to do back 1 overhead, so I can just do back 1-4 and then do overhead, and then that will full combo into itself if I'm sure he's going to block the wrong direction. So just to kind of repeat myself here, what War God Kotal Kahn's mix-ups are going to be is acknowledging where the strings hit. So I know that back 1-2-2 ends in overhead, so I'm going to do back 1-2 into low, so it goes overhead or low. Back 1-4, a low, or back 1 into an overhead, that's also a 50-50. Down 4 into 50-50, down 4 into low, back 1 into the 50-50. Just most things that you can do. Even forward 1, back 2. These kind of pokes that you're talking about, I mentioned earlier on, these pokes can go into 50-50s. You can even do these. If you think the opponent's going to try and punish this, you can do back 1-2 into meter bend sword and just blow through his punish attempt. The important thing of Kotal Kahn is, in most situations, almost every poke has to go into one of these 50-50s, because meterless, they're totally safe on block. So it basically means that every time you get in, he has to respect one of these options, that if he guesses wrong, he's going to take 9% damage. And bear in mind, that's actually some pretty good chip. 3% chip is nothing to shake a stick at. But honestly, guys, that's kind of it. The one thing you do need to be careful about, though, is the fact that the opponent can interrupt you. So if I set him to reversal mode, if I go reversal mode on, this is not safe. So if I go, hang on, sorry, reversal mode on, reversal attack, cyclone. So if you're fighting Kung Lao, he's going to be looking for those gaps, and unfortunately, nearly every situation Kotal Kahn can go into one of these sword attacks, there will be a gap. So for example, this, there's a gap. This, there's a gap. He can meter burn spin you. There's a gap there as well. There's a gap there as well. So as you can see, there's actually a gap pretty much everywhere. So the second the opponent has a bar of meter, especially someone like Lao, they don't really need to respect these 50-50s, because they can just mash meter burn spin. If I do this and try and block, I get punished as well. If I try and do this and like air grab, let's do forward on back to air grab, I can still get spammed. So generally, there are holes in this, and it's one of the main reasons Kotal Kahn is not considered that particularly amazing, is because there are gaps up the wazoo for this character. They don't even need to respect the 50-50 option. If they have a bar of meter, they can interrupt you pretty much every time. A lot of these instances, even just doing back 1 into it, back 1 overhead, he can even interrupt that. So you can see it's If they have a bar of meter, you just need to be careful. They can punish you if they get it correctly, but just turn them off reversal. Just to kind of go over it one more time. War God Kotal Kahn is you play this mid-range footsie game, and then the second you get in, you start applying the 50-50 option in the overhead or the low swipe. Regular ones are safe on block, meter burn one is unsafe, but bags are full combo. So remember the strings, and when the string would hit a specific direction, use your sword to attack the opposite direction if you think they're going to block the entire string rather than predict what a sword is coming out. So back 1 4, they expect the low, so do back 1 meter burn sword. If you think he's going to block the low, you can do back 1 overhead, he gets hit, and that full combos for 33% damage at the very least. So that's kind of the basics of War God Kotal Kahn, guys. This is a really important move. The armor on it is a big deal. You'll see Kotal Kahn use it all the time. But at higher level play, it's about conditioning them to block certain strings and giving them the special move which hits in the opposite direction. Hopefully you guys were able to kind of follow me there. It's not particularly complicated, but it basically just means you've got to learn your strings, and that's kind of it, really. That's it. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that. That is an introduction to War God Kotal Kahn. Hopefully you guys learned something there. He is really fun to play. By all means, give it a go. The opponent isn't always going to mash out of those armor strings, because not everyone knows how many gaps are actually in this guy's offense. So, give it a go. Hopefully you guys have some fun. I am Ketchup. Make sure you like and subscribe. Follow us at PNDK&M on Twitch and YouTube. We'll see you guys around. Take care.